everything we do in life starts with a single step, but no matter what it is, we can sit there and we can say, life is too scary, the world is too scary, I can't do this. Or we can take a single step. Getting the book, reading that chapter is your first step to moving forward in diversifying and give yourself some opportunities. And it's opportunities for your children and your grandchildren. If you're building up this generational wealth, you've got that there for your grandchildren, ultimately. So we're looking after the kids, ultimately.
We're here on Pat Mesiti's best-selling author podcast with Heidi Brady, who is a holistic well-being advocate, and she is a financial resilience educator. Now, Heidi Brady helps people take control of what she calls their wealth being, which is the powerful intersection of personal well-being and financial empowerment. And Heidi has guided families and communities toward monetary resilience through practical strategies like precious metals investing, diversification, and digital assets. And her mission is to demystify money, to challenge your outdated assumptions, and to show you how to prepare for that uncertain future with confidence. So we're here to have this conversation to blend real-world financial tools with her deeply personal mission to help you thrive. So, Ms. Heidi, glad to see you. Glad to be speaking with you.
Nice to see you, Robert. Thank you for the opportunity.
You're very welcome, and thank you for being here. So, tell me about what's your take on money? It seems like it's one of those things where some people make excuses about it, right? Oh, I have bad luck. I don't understand it. I don't use it. And then life really beats them up, doesn't it? They struggle with money. They get into debt. They can't make ends meet. They don't get to live the life that they deserve and can enjoy. And it really sucks. It needs to be better, doesn't it?
It does. But it's historical. Did you learn any of this stuff at school? They don't teach
Not
it
at
in
all.
school. We don't discuss it with our families growing up as a young person. It was never discussed. You go along, you do your job, you earn some income, you pay off your mortgage, you do whatever you do, but it's actually not discussed.
Right. And why is that? Is there a grand conspiracy, or is it negligence, or a mix? Like, why aren't we taught these things?
I think people take it for granted that it will just happen and it'll be okay. I think people are so busy, they don't plan. And because when you're on the treadmill and you're running around and not running around, it's not even the stress of running around. It's you have the kids, you've got the sports events, you've got the music lessons, you've got the classes that you go to, you've got the football, all of those sort of activities. And it just happens. So people don't plan for it.
And they need to. And that already is helpful, right? That there are two mindsets. There's the day-to-day mindset and there's the big picture. And for sure, you don't want to have too much of one or the other, right? You don't want your head in the clouds and thinking about 50 years from now and ignoring today. But it seems like a common problem is just putting out the fires, as they say, right? School, soccer practice, job. Then now I'm so tired and I never had time to plan for the future. But the future is coming, whether we like it or not. And the next thing we know, we ran out of time and we woulda, shoulda, coulda made so many money moves 10, 20, 30 years ago. And so how do people start to get their head around this? If they have these excuses, so to speak, right? About I'm so busy, I'm so tired, there's way too much going on, I don't have time to think about the future. What would you say to someone like that?
Two things, actually. First of all, get the book. And
Okay.
then you can actually have a look at the chapter. In the book or in the chapter, what I've given is an overview of a number of different considerations that people can look at. And my goal in the book is to have it as a checklist or a guidebook that as people work their way through some of the concepts, they can make a note of, if I'm looking at silver or gold, here's the phone number of some of the people I can contact. If I'm looking at digital assets or crypto, oh, here's the broker that I can be in contact with. Or this is if I follow up on self-managed super funds or saving for the future. Here's some of the things I can look at. So the book is handy. But I think the most important thing is targeting our young people and our teenagers. Because certainly a lot of young people I talk to, they say, why would I do that for? Like, why would I think about when I'm 60 when I'm only 16? Like, why would I do that for? And so it's too far in the future for them, but it's educating our young people so they're prepared. They don't have to spend 24/7 thinking about this stuff, but they should have a plan in the background or a little bit of an idea of when they're working, if they've got multiple jobs, they might be working in a cafe or a bar or something, and they've got multiple jobs. Maybe one of the ideas is one of their jobs, they start focusing on investing in this sort of area. So it becomes their normal. That's what we want. We want this stuff to be people's normal.
Yeah, we do. And we want to have these conversations early about money. That way it becomes embedded in our mindset, don't we? That it's like cramming for a test 5 minutes before versus you studied for the test the whole semester, and then you're already adjusted and you're way less stressed. And you mentioned the book. So the book is called Reinvented You. We can find it at Reinvented You book, and the Heidi Brady chapter, which is the best one. I say that because you're here right in front of me. It's called Mind Over Money, Mastering Monetary Freedom. And at the end of that chapter, there's a link to her website, which is arranhealth.com. That's ARRAN health.com. And I don't know about you, Heidi, but I'm one of those people that I don't like to multitask. Sometimes it happens, right? So sometimes if I'm listening to a podcast, I'm like, hey, what's her website? At least I'll have the tab open so that way when we're done, it'll already be open and I'll know more about what she has to say. And so you say that the young people need to be educated ahead of time because of course, no one's thinking about decades from now. Who knows what the world will look like? We'll be living on Mars, living on Jupiter or something by then. And so, but isn't the present more important now? And, what I found very powerful is when people say, well, there's multiple paths taking you from the present to the future. And like, there's maybe this path where you don't save money and the graph looks very flat. And then if you went crazy, it's like almost a rocket ship. But even if you save like a little bit, then you have like, by the time your retirement, you have $4 million versus $100,000, and you don't and just from like a little bit of savings, and it's like, whoa, that is a really good benefit. So as far as waking up the youths of today and telling them about how it's important to master the money or at least be aware of it, have you found anything to be helpful in getting their attention? Or like if you were to reform the education system and say, hey, here's what you should know, what will you tell those young kids? That way they take this seriously.
One of the things that's been interesting lately is, of course, young people love crypto. But it's been really interesting, especially Bitcoin. It's been very interesting on the number of young people who got into Bitcoin many years ago. I thought my young people in my community were crazy at doing this, of course. They got into Bitcoin when it was very, very low. And then as they started buying their houses, they sold out. And then Bitcoin has boomed. And so now that we're looking at Bitcoin and have gone into that direction, they had it, back then, and we thought they were crazy. And then they look at us and think we're crazy, but they're saying, oh, I shouldn't have sold that, should I? So, they were really the ones who got us into the crypto market, is our young people. But they didn't hold on as long as what they should. In fact, they should have just held on.
Right.
And so talking to them, they were the ones who were introducing us to crypto, and we're thinking, oh, it's a bit scary. But they used it to their advantage. But it was just a shame that they didn't hold on. And so their lives are online, aren't they? Their lives are on their computers, or on their phones, or on their laptops, or on their iPads, whatever. They are operating their lives online. So the whole crypto thing didn't bother them, but they should have held on. And so then you look at the whole gold and silver thing, and you try to introduce them to the physical assets and how pretty silver and gold is. And so they're looking, oh, I don't know about that. I'm dealing with my crypto, but it's really getting that forward thinking and diversifying, a bit of this, a bit of that, a bit of money in the bank, investing, and we're fighting against the marketing system with all the shiny stuff, the new clothes, the fancy car, the brand new car rather than a secondhand car, the 5-bedroom house rather than the 3-bedroom house. So, there's so many competing factors for our young people. But we've just got to bring them back. Doesn't matter what your next door neighbor has, think of your future, because your future is really important.
I agree. Keeping up with the Joneses feels good momentarily, but in decades from now, you wish that you had thought more long term. And so it seems to be getting back into the two mindsets again, right? You think about this idea of taking calculated risks, being impulsive. Cool, that's one mindset. And the other mindset of having a plan and sticking to it and following through. And if you have too much of the impulsiveness, then you buy Bitcoin early, which is great, but then you sell it too early. And if you have too much long term, well, you take too long to buy into Bitcoin. But if you kind of combine the best parts of both, then now you're really thinking. And it always helps me sometimes to get back to basics. I don't know about you, Heidi. Sometimes if I'm learning something, I do a Google search and I say, just what do they say? What's the Wikipedia entry, right? And so when it comes to some of these ideas you mentioned, right? You mentioned there's precious metals like silver and gold. And the way I've heard that explained is just that it's rare, right? You don't find silver and gold everywhere. So because it's rare, it has value. And it used to be tied to money, and they tried like tying like oil to money. And then at some point that all kind of became just digits, right? It became just computers. And then when it's kind of not, money's not as good as it used to be, because governments can just say, hey, we printed more. And even worse than that, not even printing, they just said we added into the computer system more fake dollars. So it's kind of like a little shaky. And then this thing called cryptocurrency and Bitcoin came around, when they kind of explained this as like peer-to-peer currency, right? Instead of one bank or one government printing money, like it's just spread out across millions of computers. But it's still like kind of hard for someone to wrap their head around. So if someone said, hey, Heidi, cryptocurrency, what is it? And precious metals, why does it make sense? Like, how would you explain to something who's looking to get back to basics about these money ideas?
It's about diversifying. So at the moment, people put their money in the bank. So when they're savings, you go to the bank, don't you? You diversify, you put your money in the bank. Some people invest in shares on the share market, putting money into superannuation, which is also share market. And so it's quite limited. So by having the precious metals and the digital assets, so your Bitcoin, for example, you're actually diversifying across a number of different fields. So it means that if one isn't working, you've got other options. And so, when we look at the growth of Bitcoin, over the last few years, it's been crazy. If you look at gold, for example, 1 ounce gold in under 3 years, certainly in Australia, has doubled. Now, our fiat, when we're devaluing or when they're printing more money, so as our fiat's devaluing, of course, that's pushing the price up. But if people invested in a 1 ounce gold, for example, 3 years ago, now they would have doubled their money. So, or doubled the value. So if they sold it off, if they needed to sell it off for some reason, they would have had twice as much as they started with. So it's forward thinking. So it's looking into the future. And it's diversifying. So having a little bit here and a little bit there and a little bit somewhere else. And that way you can fall back on any of those positions. You're not restricted to just one area.
I like it. And because that's always like you think about what's the downside of diversifying, people think, oh, well, if I do a little bit of each thing, then if one goes up, won't another go down? And you're saying like, no, sometimes two things go up, right? The traditional fiat money is they're messing with it too much and it's declining. Well, then cryptocurrency and precious metals go up because there's many alternatives, right? It's not necessarily a zero-sum game. And then there's also the timing aspect. So you can buy into all these different things, and then say if gold goes up, you can say, hey, well, now if I choose to sell it, then I can. Or if cryptocurrency goes up, I can sell not all of it, but I can strategically sell some of it. But then now we're getting into the emotional roller coaster of it all, right? And any of us who's played around with cryptocurrency or forex or stock market, oh boy, like if you feel like it's, you get the rush of gambling, and also that terrible feeling of if it goes down and you're hanging on to it, or you sold too early and it goes up some more. And so as far as people dealing with like the emotions of money and the blind spots and everything that goes with that, like what advice do you have for someone to like decouple the emotions from money, or maybe help emotions like work for them? Like how do we eliminate the fear and the greed and these just mental problems when it comes to money?
Some people like the rush.
Okay.
And it's like anything, isn't it? Some people like the rush. They like living on the edge. This is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. This is just, this is just being sensible. But it, but purchasing those things, whether it's Bitcoin or whether it's silver or whether it's gold, and holding on to it, storing, it's another aspect of storing what you've worked hard for. So rather than having it just in the bank, you've got it stored in silver, you've got it stored in gold. And as that comes up over time, for example, if someone is buying, I'll give an example of a 1 ounce silver coin. Every pay packet, they go and buy a 1 ounce silver coin. They're not going to feel the pressure of that. It's not like, it's costing them $100, depending on where people live. But they put aside one coin every pay packet. And then over the time, as that increases in value, maybe down the track, that contributes towards them purchasing a house down the track or whatever they choose to do. And even with gold, with the gold increasing in price, over the last couple of years, maybe some people might choose to sell off some of their gold and purchase silver, because silver is, predicted to climb. But it depends on, everyone is different. And this is part of where my chapter is in the book, that I look at a lot of those different things. I don't live on the edge. So when you invest, you invest. That's just the way it is, for the future. So, but some people do. I do know people who play the crypto market and have done quite well, but I'm not one of them. I just know.
And you know yourself. And so there's been a lot of helpful advice you've given us so far, right? Just these ideas like diversifying, be careful about living too much in the moment. And that's how you end up making dumb purchases and getting into debt and keeping up with the Joneses. And it seems like what you're on the track here telling us is to maybe figure out your rules and figure out your plan, right? Like you said, well, every pay packet, buy a coin of silver. And then I'm saying, okay, well, when will I sell it? Instead of just on a whim, you had a bad day, you had a good day. Okay, I'll just do it now. You say, well, what's my plan? Like, what are the conditions for me to then sell it? And it seems like there's a little bit of subtext here there's kind of what feels good to you and what gives you the rush. And there's also what serves you, right? And for some people, those two things match up, and that's great. And some people, those things are opposite, isn't it? It feels good, but it also hurts me in the short run and the long run. And so, like, what would you say is maybe the secret to your monetary success? Or when you help people out, some people are bad with money, some people learn to get good. Like, what's the real secret to it?
The secret is to be sensible. The secret is have a plan. One of the things I like, we have some fairly strong communities here. And so we feed off each other with our communities. And so we all have a similar mindset on what the end goal is. And so we're sort of supporting each other on this journey, because this journey is quite new for a lot of people. This is not something that my parents talked about or my grandparents talked about. And even within our communities, no one has come up and said, oh, my family used to do this all the time. It's just so new. So it's supporting each other. It's finding a community and supporting each other in this process and learning together. So that secret, and I guess a lot of this has been, I'm not going to say hidden from us. I don't know whether hidden from us is the right word, but we just It hasn't been something that we've talked about. So now we're actually bringing it out into the open and talking about it and actually sharing our experiences and our wisdom amongst our communities and saying, well, what have you done? Why have you done this? And how did you go about that? And then even having our the people who you buy from, and knowing that if you buy from, for example, if you're buying silver, who are you going to buy from? And if you do need to sell down the track, who do you actually sell back to? Because some people have, they when you sell back, you'll lose an amount of money through that selling process. So how do you actually get through that as well? But I think the secret is building community and building community to support each other on this journey, because it is a new journey for a lot of people.
Yes. And like we've been saying, it's not a journey that has easy solutions or instant solutions, right? Everyone's situation is different. There's the strategy. There's so many little tiny questions to be solved. Who do I buy from? Who do I sell from? This new change happened in the past month. What about my specific situation? And you think about this idea that there's the mind and then there's the mastermind, isn't there? There's like, well, I'm limited in my own logic and knowledge and emotion and all that. But then if I can tap into that community, then I can get a little dose of information every day. I can kind of keep up with stuff. And it's more entertaining in general, isn't it? When you hear about other people's stories and perspectives, and it's not just about you and you're helping them and they're helping you. And it's really great, right? And this helps us all be in it together. And you don't feel so alone. And you have other people supporting you. They say, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And so if someone wants to go together and they say, what Heidi's mentioning about joining a community, that's great. Do you have some next steps there? Do you have some place where they can join a community of people where they can all get their wealth and their future figured out?
One of the things that's really valuable, if someone loves this stuff and is really interested, I'm going to say get the book.
Okay, sure.
But why not within your community, put some flyers out in your community, put a Facebook post out within your community and say, hey, look, we're catching up at the such and such cafe and we're going to catch up on Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. Let's talk about whatever we're going to talk about. Let's talk about silver coins. Like let's say we're going to have a chat about silver coins. Put it out to your community. Come and have a coffee and join us for a chat. And then what you're doing is you're finding out people who do know about this or maybe who don't know, and then what they can do. And so you're supporting each other. And I found the book came about because within one of my communities, a lot of women were saying, oh, I've never done this before. It's really scary. I don't know what to do. And as a joke, we said, well, why don't we set up a women's think tank? And within 2 weeks, we did. And it was very successful. And we talked about all this stuff. And basically, that night created the book because we found amongst, in our little community, we found that we were all asking the same questions. We were all wondering the same things. And we said, how do we find this stuff out? And so that's where the book chapter came about is, right, what do we need to know? Why do we need to know about it? What do we do next? Who do we ask? Who do we phone? What website? And so the book now provides a space where if someone's reading up about digital assets, for example, they can make some notes. Right, let's go to this broker. Let's go to this platform. And so it's giving them a guidebook. And so that's where the book came from one of our community chats. It started off as, oh, yeah, maybe we could do this. We did it. It was very successful. Let's put it in a book. And that's really what, and there it is.
Very nice. What a concept of people with a similar problem or similar hopes and dreams with these real problems come up with real solutions and say, hey, let's get it written down. Let's get it permanent. That way other people can benefit from it. And I like your basically leadership ideas here, right? You say, a lot of people come up with these excuses and say, I don't have time to figure out money. And you might even see a flyer like this and, these people are meeting at a coffee shop. Oh, I'm too good for that. Well, if you push through the awkwardness of talking to strangers. It's like you think about how awkward a first date is, or that first day of school, right? And you get past it, and hey, you in that room with those few people who are similar to you and who took that little bit of ounce of confidence to talk to some strangers, to talk about these future plans. And it sure beats complaining about the weather or complaining about the economy. Well, take control of the economy. We're in this amazing era of humanity where we can get educated on all these different resources. And I mean, these ideas like cryptocurrency and precious metals, they were sure as heck a lot harder to figure out even a few years ago. And now you have this amazing resource, which is the book Mind Over Money by Miss Heidi Brady. And you can find out about that and more at reinventedYoubook.com. That's a book that Heidi has co-authored with Mr. Pat Mesiti. And then Heidi's website is also AaronHealth.com. That's ARRANHEALTH.com. And are there any other additional resources to plug here, like social media links, or is it just reinventedyoubook.com? Go get the book.
Go get the book. Go get the book, read the chapter, because it was set up as a guidebook. I want the mini book, people to carry it around in their bag or their laptop bag or their backpack. And every time they hear of a website that they can follow up, write it in the book. If they find a bullion dealer and the phone number and they've had good reviews, write it in the book. Go and talk to people. And it's a big education process, but I'm hoping that the book will give people a guide on, okay, if I consider silver, for example, what sort of silver should I look at? How do I buy it? I mean, even people who say, I can't afford to do that, you can buy 1/10 ounce, tiny little ones, which in Australia are about $8 or $9. It's a good start. But get the book, have a look on that. You can jump on the website. People can send me a message through the website anyway, or they can book a little appointment and have a chat if they need to. But I'm hoping that the book will really set them up on their journey to investigate a lot of this at this area, which, we haven't had access to readily.
Right.
And
Exciting.
there's lots of good people out there, like there are people out there.
Yeah, there are more than you think, right? And they're the right people are generous with their time, and they're giving, and they're curious, and they're people that you want to have in your corner. And so this is a wonderful conversation, and especially there's a lot of dissolving the excuses and objections, right? Even if someone says, "Oh, I don't have millions of dollars," just say, "Hey, you can start with just 1/10 of an ounce." And so there's more possibilities and opportunities out there than you think. You just need to be educated by going to reinventedyoubook.com. And we'll also have links underneath this podcast to Heidi's website, and also the link to get just the tiny book on its own. That way you can get it and take lots of notes. But before I let you go, Heidi, it's time for the scary part of the podcast, where I try to stump you. I try to put you on the spot by asking you about a fun quote or lesson that has served you in life or in business. So what comes to mind for a quote or lesson?
There's a couple, actually. I guess Stephen Covey was one that I've held on to years. Start with the end in mind. What do you want to see? What's the end result that you want? And then work backwards. Ooh. But I guess my favorite is a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Yes. And that single step is the scary thing, no matter what it is. The single step in buying, a 1/10 ounce silver coin. It's interesting when people do and they hold on to it and they show you how excited they are, how their face lights up. Oh, isn't this so cute? So yeah, Lao Tzu that was probably the most powerful thing for me, is everything we do in life starts with a single step. And no matter what it is, we can sit there and we can say, life is too scary, the world is too scary, I can't do this. Or we can take a single step. Getting the book, reading that chapter is your first step to moving forward in diversifying and give yourself some opportunities. And it's opportunities for your children and your grandchildren. If you're building up this generational wealth, you've got that there for your grandchildren, ultimately. So we're looking after the kids, ultimately.
Yes. That's great. That's powerful. Generational wealth. It doesn't have to be just about you. It's easy to have that low self-esteem, but you say, "Hey, what about your grandkids?" And we're back to those two mindsets, right? You say that you begin with the end in mind, and I heard recently someone say, like, draw a box and figure out what that end is, and then draw like an arrow pointing to it, and draw a box before that. And something as simple as that, just kind of going backwards. And then once you draw that out, it's like, well, now are you back to head in the clouds too much? You say no, because then you combine beginning with the end in mind with the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So you figured out that master plan and you say, okay, what will I do for step number one to look into that
Yeah.
bullion dealer, or to buy that 1/10 of an ounce, or to look into the cryptocurrency, or to go organize that coffee shop meeting. So we start at the end, you say, what's the plan? Begin that first step. That's quite the recipe for success. And so we can begin that step by going to reinventedyoubook.com. You can find the links there to Heidi's book on its own, the link on Amazon if you're an Amazon person, and get yourself educated. They don't teach this stuff in school. You won't succeed with money by accident. You hear about these statistics of like someone wins the lottery, then they lose it all. So you need to get your mind wrapped around this really bizarre but important concept called money. It makes the world go around. Miss Heidi Brady from the book Reinvented You, co-authored by Pat Mesiti, aaronhealth.com. Very fabulous and wonderful getting educated about money from you, Miss Heidi Brady. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Robert. It's been a pleasure.